What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and this is your NFL Week Number 9 betting preview. Today, of course, we'll build our Sunday six-pack of Against the Spread bets with the help of my co-host, the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, Stuckey. Stuck, what's going on?
Going on, brother. I had a small winning week. Finally had, although 1 and 2 in the six pack, I gotta get hot there. I finally had something go right. It was the first time all year at the end of a game with the Jags scoring
Yep.
for me. That was nice. But this injury luck that I've had this year, I've had some really bad reads. The Bengals were bad, although Higgins getting hurt on Friday, a different offense, and then Orlando Brown couldn't go, but the Eagles' offense was cooked the Bengals. But the Jags lost 7 starters during the game, all 3 wide receivers, 2 offensive line. I mean, crazy. And then, unfortunately for you, Daniels ended up going. I really didn't think
And
he was
still
going to
should have had the
play.
game. Still
Yeah,
should have had it.
and they win on that Hail Mary. Unbelievably bad coaching job. I mean,
Yeah, the
you
refrigerator
don't
play.
that, but then you just let them get the free out to the 50. Then on the Hail Mary, I mean, you have Stevenson taunting the crowd, and then you have one guy spying the quarterback or spying the running back as if that mattered. He was going to catch the ball, or if like you're basically and weren't rushing anybody. Like the
Yeah.
dumbest Hail Mary defense I've ever seen. And I'm curious to see if Stevenson gets like fined or benched for a half, or because that was such a bad look. He was even taunting on the 10-yard out the play before the Hail Mary. So that was pretty crazy. But had a small winning week. I wish the Giants would have got there for me. I had them plus 6.5. Unfortunately, they
Another bad. I
did
mean, they come out with that terrible 2-point conversion play.
unbelievable. But it really came down to the punt return, where they just decided
Yeah,
not to
yeah.
call roughing the punter. I don't know. That was stunning to me. Um, but yeah, sometimes it be like that. But it's time to get hot. Let's get into week 9.
All right, Thursday night football. Houston Texans at the New York Jets. Jets favored by 2. The total is 42. Of course, the big news for Houston is wide receiver Stephon Diggs out for the season with an ACL injury. So the Jets are favored in this spot. The Jets have been catching some weird luck, and I had the Patriots as my money line dog on this show last week, but man, the Jets just cannot catch a break. Now they're favored. This still makes me nervous, even though Houston's down some people on offense, because I just don't know where the collective psyche of the Jets is at. It's a short week. The superior team usually wins on a short week. The Texans are that, even though they aren't favored. So I lean Houston. What about you?
Yeah, I might be on the Jets in some form or fashion, waiting on their injury report. Specifically on defense, they should have all their corners. Probably be shorthanded at safety. I doubt Mosley goes. But like this is just a classic spot. You have a 2-6 team who's been extremely unlucky. Everyone is just piling on. You had like your hot take artist on ESPN. Like I think Mike Greenberg was like, "This is the biggest colossal failure in the history of sports." It's like people weren't just saying the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl. There was a lot of questions about this team, starting with how effective Rodgers would be. But they've dealt with some injuries. They've had really bad luck. I mean, Greg Zuerlein, who going to IR only can help them. He's 2 for 5 on fourth quarter field goals, 1 of 4 when the game's within 3 points. And the Jets are they've lost 5 straight, and 4 of them have been by 1 possession. The one blowout loss was actually pretty unlucky against Pittsburgh. I mean, they had every single member of their secondary go down. Couple bad bounces in that game as well. But they could have beat the Bills. They should have beat the Patriots last week. I mean, they dominated that game. Since 1933, teams were 750-0 when scoring 20 plus, committing no turnovers, and allowing fewer than 250 yards. They're now 750-1 after the Jets lost that game to New England. I mean, just dominated the game statistically. Horrible coaching. just like delay of games at the worst possible times, timeout management. They are a poorly coached team. But they had a chance to beat the Vikings. They had a chance to beat the Broncos. And then you look at the Texans, they're on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're 6-2, but they haven't really been that impressive. I mean, this is a team with a +9 point differential. +9, and they're 6-2. So, and they don't have the most impressive wins. They beat the Colts twice, the Bears. Their most impressive win against the Bills by 3. They beat the Jags, the Patriots. Team's not really playing well. Their early down play calling has not been great. Their bottom 5 in success rate. The offensive line hasn't been great. Now you don't have Nico Collins. Your offense is night and day with him in the lineup. On top of that, you lose Diggs. So, how is this team consistently going to move the ball? I have serious questions. You got who are you going to have in there now? Hutchinson and Robert Woods. It's you got to rely on Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. It's not a great situation right now for the Texans. I think that they're a bit overvalued, and I think that this line is close to about right market-wise, because if you look, these two teams have played the Patriots in recent weeks in New England. They were both around a 7-point favorite. I know the Jets lost, but they dominated the game statistically. The Texans have lost, have now lost Dell on top of Collins. You have a cluster injury. Diggs on top of Collins. So, yeah, the spot screams to me it's the Jets. So I might be on them in some fashion, but it's not a huge bet, and I hate Thursday night football, but classic, buy low, sell high with the unlucky team at home against the lucky team dealing with important injuries at wide receiver. So yeah, I think the Jets are going to find a way here and have their luck turn, but they are poorly coached. If it's a close game, which it should be, who's going to be the kicker? Signed a couple guys. We'll see who the guy ends up being. But yeah, the Jets haven't been as bad as their record indicates, and the Texans have been nowhere close to as good as theirs.
Yeah, I don't like a couple things in this matchup. Number one, you mentioned the kicker. It's an outdoor game. It's not going to be Zerline, but it's going to be either Spencer Schrader or Riley Patterson. So if it's Patterson, that kind of restricts what you can do long range in a close game that could come back to haunt you. I also don't like that Houston has its running game going right now, because that was something we've talked about. They didn't have at points in this year with Joe Mixon, and that is one way you beat the Jets on the ground. And I think that combined with the coach, and I still lean Houston, especially with them getting points.
Yeah, I mean, but the numbers suggest, I mean, the early down play calls have been bad for Houston, and this is just not the same offense. Forget Diggs, without Collins and outdoors. They've just not performed anywhere close to what we've seen both at home and when Collins is in a lineup. So I lean Jets, but waiting on the injury report won't be a big bet.
All right. Now it's time for our NFL Week 9 Sunday 6-pack. Last week, both of us went 1 and 2. That Hail Mary really came back to haunt me. But on the
Dolphins,
season,
I'm so mad at the Dolphins. Up 10 with the ball in the second half, in control, and they snap over their head.
Yeah.
Safety, and then a touchdown, and then it was lights out. I was rooting for them to lose. The game got on 2, and I was like, I'm laying 3 here. I hope they lose outright.
Ridiculous.
Which they did. So, but yeah, I'm up first this week.
Yeah. So just for the listeners, we do 2 points for our first 2 plays, a point for our third, a point for the total, which we'll do in the next segment, and a bonus point if you sweep. On the season, I'm up 32-15. The good news is, Stuckey, you did gain a point on me last week.
Wow.
So still got some work to do, but where are you going first?
Yeah, I got to put some sweeps together. For my first pick of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens, first half, -5.5 out there. Look, this is a great spot to buy the Ravens, in my opinion. First of all, just off the bat, Lamar Jackson is a first half machine. In his career, he's 54, 29, and 2 against the spread in the first half, 65.1%. Most profitable quarterback in NFL history. He's covering by over a field goal per game in the first half. That's insane. Sample size of almost 100 games. How about as a favorite? Even better, 46, 23, and 2, 66.7%, covering by 4 points per game as a favorite in the first half. How about when laying 6 or more? 11, 3, and 1 against the spread, 78.6%, covering by 5 points per game. So just throwing that out there, there's, especially when you're not playing these divisional games, his speed, it's usually a well-prepared team, his speed is just a shock to opposing defenses. Ravens usually have a good game plan. I think they will come out here with their hair on fire after that loss to the Browns last week. Ravens should also be healthier in the secondary. Wiggins and Humphrey both practiced today. A bit worried about the interior, the defensive line. Put Michael Pierce on IR. They have a couple other guys dealing with some injuries, but this is a pass funnel defense. And the pass defense hasn't been great statistically, but they've been extremely unlucky. I mean, if you look at like the tight window percentage that they force, all the dropped interceptions, they've not been as bad as the numbers indicate. They've also dealt with some injuries, should be healthier this week. And the Broncos offense is not the offense that's going to exploit that. You need, a really good quarterback, dominant outside receivers to take advantage of the Ravens. And should I mention, the Ravens, their pass defense numbers, they've played Burrow, Mahomes, Dak, Josh Allen, Daniels, Baker when he had his weapons, Raiders when they had Adams, and then the Browns when they had Jameis Winston last week, which obviously provides much more juice to their offense. So their schedule of pass offenses has been as hard as it possibly gets. And Broncos, their offense looks good when they get their ground game going to help out Knicks. That's just not going to happen here. The Ravens have an elite run defense. And the Broncos' schedule, complete opposite end of the spectrum compared to the Ravens. Their schedule's been a joke, an absolute joke, especially when you consider the opponent injuries, the backup quarterbacks that they faced, and even the weather. So I think their defense is a bit overrated. And Knicks has been atrocious early on in games. I mean, even if you include the games against the Panthers and the Saints the past 2 weeks, where they were playing backup quarterbacks and teams decimated defenses that couldn't stop the run, Knicks negative 0.145 adjusted EPA per play in the first half. The only quarterback that's been worse is Deshaun Watson. He's been even worse in the first quarter. He has put up a lot of his stats in garbage time, go back to that Chargers game, or against the league's worst defenses with major injuries. So he's been bad in that department. Denver also very blitz heavy. Lamar Jackson this season is destroying the blitz, number 1 in the NFL against the blitz among all qualified quarterbacks. I mentioned the Ravens have been unlucky in the turnover department. They've also been unlucky in the penalty department. I mean, you're talking, if you just look at judgment call penalties, the Ravens have been flagged for 40, the most in the league by far. Their opponents only 24, fewest in the league. A net of 16, insane for through 8 games. They have some penalty regression, some turnover regression coming their way. And yeah, I don't see this Broncos offense challenging this Ravens secondary, which will be healthier. Lamar Jackson, first half against the spread. He didn't practice today, so watch, he'll be out, and I'll get Josh Johnson. I'm assuming everything is fine there. But yeah, I think this is just a good spot to back the Ravens off a loss in the first half where they're usually money, especially as a favorite against the Broncos team with the same record, but has done so against a completely fraudulent schedule. Knicks has been hard in the first half. Broncos won't be able to get their run game going. Give me the Ravens first half. Also like them for the game, but I like the first half much more. We've seen the Ravens blow leads. We've seen the Broncos come back in games and sneak in the back door a couple of times this year. Did it against Seattle. The Chargers, they came back, made that a 1-possession game. So I prefer the first half. So that's what I'm going to go with. 6 or better is fine here. I like Baltimore.
Yeah, it makes me a little worried just because, like you said, Baltimore just inconsistent in the course of a game. So I would prefer first half if I'm backing the Ravens. I think that Broncos defense could always show up. I know they blitzed a lot and played a lot of man, which is not good against a mobile quarterback, but they've also been one of the better coached teams this year. So it's not out of the realm that they adjust and kind of throw the Ravens a little bit off. And so then you could get kind of a weird, close, ugly game. So yeah, it makes me a little nervous, but I agree. The Broncos just haven't started well on offense against any functional defense. I mean, and the Ravens statistically are one of the worst defenses, but the schedule has been tough. But yeah, I feel better about the first half too.
Nick's picks are coming, and yeah, I mean the Ravens offense has just been so good. You even at Deontay Johnson maybe could give them a little something too. But this is also a rude awakening for the Denver defense based on who they played this year. I mean, their offenses. I mean, the best offense that they faced. I mean, probably Tampa. Tampa had all those defensive injuries too in that game, but the Jets in weather. You face the Raiders, the Chargers, and you were getting blown out in that game, 21-0. The Saints with their backup quarterback, the Panthers with Bryce Young. I mean, this is a big step up in class. I'll give me the Ravens first half. Where you at it?
For my first pick, the second overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys plus 2.5. The Atlanta Falcons. See if it gets back to 3. I don't know if it will, but no hurry at the 2.5. Doesn't matter for this contest because we don't do pushes here. But for me, there's a couple of things. Number one, you're going to get Dallas they got to get back on it here. And they're on the road off a loss, 11-5 against the spread with Dak in his career, 69%. On the road off a loss under McCarthy, 14-7, 67% against the spread. But I just think this Atlanta team is a little bit fraudulent just based on these matchups against this Tampa Bay defense when they've been really banged up. Kirk Cousins, 2 games against the Bucs defense, averaging 392.5 yards per game with 8 touchdowns and 1 interceptions total. And then against every other defense.
NFL record, by the way, most touchdowns against one opponent.
Yeah. And then against every other defense that hasn't been Tampa Bay, he's averaging 220 passing yards, hasn't cleared 250 in a game with 6 touchdowns and 6 picks. So the offense,
that includes a game against the Panthers and the Saints.
Yeah.
Like that's their last 4 wins against their division teams and none of those defenses are playing well.
Right. And I'll give them, they did put up 38 on the Panthers. So I'm not going to knock them for that. But what I will say is I think this offense is still mediocre. There's a lot of teams in the NFC that I think are mediocre. I think these 2 teams, there's not really a difference between them, except, Atlanta on defense, they don't get sacks. Their 2.2% sack rate is dead last. They're bottom 3 in pressure rate as per usual. And this Dallas team, even without Micah Parsons, they're going to get a little bit of pressure. They're going to blitz. They're going to be aggressive. Kirk Cousins still a statue in the pocket. So I think both of these teams are fairly evenly matched, but I just trust Dallas's defense to create a little more havoc and pressure Cousins. Whereas I think this Atlanta defense is, for the most part, like Dak's going to be thrown from a clean pocket. Dallas probably still going to have no run game, but I think they can do it through the air in this one. And I'm getting 2.5 here. Hopefully we could get back to 3, but I just think Dallas, more desperate team. Everyone's kind of, Atlanta, they're in, I think it's an 82% playoff odds now. So everyone's all hyped on Atlanta over these just ridiculous performances against the Bucs. So I feel like this is potentially peak market for Atlanta. You're not going to have a quarterback that's thrown, has played that well, and he's already played the 2 division games, and we're only in Week 9. This is just kind of one of those weird circumstances where it sets up where this is almost certainly the peak of the market for the Atlanta Falcons. Even if they beat the Dallas Cowboys, we're going to think they're any better? No. So I'm going to fade the Falcons at this spot. Give me a Dallas plus 2.5.
Yeah, just like your Browns pick last week. that was your first pick. This would have been my second pick. I bet the Cowboys as well. Deron Bland should be back. That's big. Is there an outside shot Parsons plays? I know
Yeah, he
McCarthy came
is.
out today and
There's a
said
quote.
he's not ready to practice, but
I think it's more like 50-50 or somewhere between like 25 and 50 maybe, but last week it was more like between 0 and 25. So
yeah.
there's a chance. Yeah.
Yeah, but Bland should be back. They got healthy, they got Kendricks back, their green dot last week. But you're right. I mean, even if they didn't have any of these guys back on defense, I think that Dallas could keep up.
Yeah.
Offensively. Dak with all day to throw against the Atlanta defense, it gets zero pressure. I mean, they signed Judon. I like the signing. Supposed to juice up. He's ranked per PFF the second worst edge rusher among, I think, 75 in the NFL. He hasn't done anything. And the Falcons easily could be 2-5. I mean, and I'll give them the Chiefs win. They should have arguably should be the Chiefs. But even if you give them one of the fourth downs or you give them that pass interference, you still have Mahomes would still have the ball down either 1 or 3 late. But the Eagles quarterback sneak. They lose that game. They get last second field goals against the Falcons, the Bucks. Against the Saints in a game where they had multiple non-offensive scores. They win by 2. They beat the Bucks in overtime after they kicked a field goal with 1 second left. And they beat the Bucks without their top 2 receivers last week. Defense got shredded. This is a team 2 weeks ago that got blown out at home by the Seahawks, who haven't looked great of late with all their injuries. And they lost by 20. It's not a great home field advantage. I agree. There's not much between these teams, and it's just a good buy low, sell high point. With the Falcons' last 4 wins, like as I mentioned, all came against teams in their division, and no one in that division is playing well outside of Atlanta. 3 of them came by 1 possession. Those teams had a ton of injuries. Sandwiched in between there is that blowout loss to Seattle. Meanwhile, Cowboys coming off losses against Detroit and San Francisco.
Yeah.
2 of the best teams, not only in the NFC, but the NFL. So, yeah, I like this. And Dallas has been one of the unluckiest teams in the NFL from a number of standpoints. Red zone, 31st in the NFL in red zone touchdown rate on offense, 32nd on defense. That usually regresses, especially for a team like Dallas. They should be better than the worst in the league in both. They're also the unluckiest team in terms of when you look at EPA from a turnover perspective. So both on offense and defense, they've been extremely unlucky. So yeah, there's some potential positive regression coming Dallas's way. I like the Cowboys as well. All right, for my second pick and the third overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings first half. There's a -3 out there. Grab that. Obviously a key number, especially for first half. Doesn't matter for this contest, but we can load that in the app. And but obviously this will get graded at 3.5, which is more widely available. Still like it there. I think this is a really good spot for Minnesota. Extended rest for a great coaching staff. And off of 2 losses at home with one of the best home field advantages in the NFL in prime time. Now, the Colts came out. They said they're going to start Joe Flacco. I don't know why you announced it early in the week for Flores, but that's a story for another day. What do we know Flores is going to do? He's going to blitz. Colts and Flacco have been absolutely atrocious against the blitz. Now they have offensive line injuries. Their offensive line is not going to be at full strength. That's a problem. More importantly, O'Connell has been arguably the best coach in the NFL this season when it comes to scripting plays. And now he has extra time to prepare against a basic defense that you know what you're going to get. And you know they're not going to blitz. You know they're not going to get a bunch of pressure, which is important because you lost Darrisaw, your star left tackle. Vikings, been the best first quarter offense in the NFL. Great first half offense. Now, second half, different story. Bottom third in EPA and success rate. Part of that has to do with the script and the impact that it has in the first quarter and first half. even the Vikings defense has been much better in the first half. And if you look at the numbers, Vikings have been winning their first halves by over a touchdown per game on average. They've only trailed at the half once against Detroit, who seems to have their number. They definitely have Flores' number. Their other 6 games, they've led by an average of 10.2 points per game, led by 6 or more in 5 of those 6. And while the Vikings have been dominant in the first half, the Colts have not. Colts first half offense, 27th EPA per play, 31st success rate. They've only led at the half in 2 games. And now they didn't even lead at the half against the Dolphins with their backup quarterback, the Packers with their backup quarterback. Gus Bradley, also, you know what you're going to get. And when he does have to adjust, he's super slow to do it. So usually only do it at halftime. You go back to that Packers game when they ran for almost an NFL record in the first half, and then Bradley finally made the adjustments in the second half. He's slow to adjust. I think the Colts are also extremely overvalued. Yes, they cover every week, but I mean, this is a team, they have wins over the Steelers, who have since benched their quarterback, the Road Bears, and the Titans, plus the Dolphins with their backup quarterback, all by 1 possession. I know all their games are 1 possession, but they've come back in a number of these, which does worry me a bit just in the second half. Could be a backdoor here. I just prefer the first half. The spot, the staff, the scripting. Flores is going to have some unique blitz packages that are going to bother Flacco. Don't really have to worry about the run game as much. And Vikings' run defense has been elite. The Colts' early down offense has been awful with Flacco in there. So I really like the spot for Minnesota. I think they jump out early on the Colts. Blitz gives Flacco some issues. And yeah, I think this line has come down a bit too much.
Flacco, I mean, he had that great game, but it was against the Jaguars, right?
Who had nothing in the second half.
Yeah. So, I mean, Flacco's not just
he's getting too much love. Like, even the Steelers game, they were up 14-0 with Richardson in that game. And against the Titans, they had like 6 first downs. They scored 17 points. They had 6 first downs because of penalty. And then he hit the game-winning touchdown on a, 3rd and long jump ball to Pittman. So, he's been better than Richardson, but it hurts the run game. And I think he's gonna be forced into a mistake or two against Flores, and he's really gonna struggle with the blitz. Like, probably you might have a rookie left tackle here as well, which isn't great against this Vikings team. Extra rest, extra prep for this staff off 2 losses at home in prime time. I like it. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm surprised that the number is even this close. I mean, I know Flacco is an upgrade on Richardson, who's been just terrible, but I think I think people are kind of down on the Vikings all of a sudden. They come off these 2 losses. Everyone's, they're just who we thought they were. It's like, no, I mean, they played the Rams in a spot where, the Rams kind of surprised them with both starting receivers coming back, caught them probably a little off guard. And
short week on the road after that
playing Detroit,
too,
coming off a Detroit game. Yeah, it was just a tough spot, but I still think the Vikings are elite. So yeah, I'm surprised the numbers even this close, but I guess some money's coming on the Colts. All right, for my second pick in the 4th overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Cleveland Browns +2 against the Los Angeles Chargers at home. And for me, I'm just going to continue to buy Cleveland because I think the market's still too low on them with the change of quarterback. And they still have some injuries. Now they have Owusu Koromoa. We'll see about Denzel Ward. I think he's hurt. And so there's still some injuries to be sure, but we know quarterback is always going to be the biggest thing when it comes to point differential. And Jameis Winston, he has 64 dropbacks this year. 41 quarterbacks have 64 more dropbacks. Winston right now is number 1 in adjusted EPA per dropback. Deshaun Watson was 39th, and Herbert's, kind of middle of the pack, 21st. And so even with some of the injuries on defense, this Charger offense doesn't really scare me. Herbert's a great quarterback, but just the way they're playing, they're playing pretty conservatively. J.K. Dobbins, as we get deeper into the season, the explosive runs have disappeared. The receiving core, they're talking about trading Josh Palmer. So McConkey is their best receiver. He's been good, but everyone seems to be dealing with an injury. They go with a lot of heavy personnel. So it's just going to be one of those games where I don't think the Chargers are going to, get up by margin or anything like that. And you have a team that plays indoors, going outdoors to Cleveland, a more desperate Cleveland team. And if before the season, you just looked at these two teams, they would both have been, okay, they're probably in the running for one of those final playoff spots in the AFC. So now I'm getting points at home with the Cleveland Browns against a more indoor team that just hasn't really looked impressive. I mean, the Chargers lose to the Arizona Cardinals. Again, they don't get in the end zone in that game, or they don't really put up enough points to beat 5 field goals or whatever it was. I mean, this Charger team is just not very impressive to me. And I think some of the things with their defense, they're playing a really good defense, but they don't get a lot of pressure. They just sit back in a ton of zone. They've done it all year, so their pressure rate is actually second worst. They're 31st, and a lot of they're just sitting back in zone and whatnot. But that's if you're not going to get pressure on Jameis Winston, and he's at home, and the Browns still have a defense, even if some guys are out, and more importantly, Jameis Winston has an offensive line now, so it's going to be harder to get pressure on him. Wyatt Teller's back, Conklin's back. Maybe even Jedrick Wills comes back this week. I don't know, but the line is healthy. I don't expect this Charger team to build margin, and that means that the Browns are going to be able to run the ball with Nick Chubb, who look a little better last week against Baltimore. This is not. It's hard. It's a good run defense, but not as tough as Baltimore. So I think this should be closer to a pick 'em. I think there's just still this market overreaction to all of Cleveland's injuries combined with just a historically bad quarterback performance from Deshaun Watson. I think these are two kind of middle of the pack AFC teams. So give me the Cleveland Browns +2.
Yeah, I mean, my kids, I don't think JOK or Wood are going to play, but that's definitely worth monitoring. I'd rather tease the Browns. That's a teaser for our teaser segment, just because I just worry that Winston's going to throw a key pick and Herbert won't, with the Chargers sitting back in those zones. Like last week, he had all day to throw against the Ravens, and the Ravens should have had like 3 picks in that game, but they dropped them all. So that's my fear with this. So I'd rather have just some margin with a lower total. But yeah, the Browns definitely, I think, in general, are an undervalued team. So I agree in principle, because now their offensive line, Chubb, will only continue to get healthier as well. And it's just such a big upgrade from Watson to Winston. And the defense still is really good. And I also think that the Chargers are an overvalued team.
Yeah.
Who have they played? They start off the season, they play the Raiders with Minshew. He gets benched before the injury to O'Connell. They play Bryce Young and the Panthers. They lose to Justin Fields and the Steelers. He's been benched. They lose to the Chiefs. They play Bo Nix and the Broncos. They lose to the Cardinals. And then they play Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. I mean, that is... So when you look at their defensive metrics, major asterisks. Like, they've played as easy of a schedule. And they even played Mahomes. Kidding. So, I mean, they've played as easy of a schedule of opposing quarterbacks as you possibly can. Next week they play the Titans.
Oh my God.
So at home, the Chargers usually, oh man, might be going to the Titans next week. Chargers are not a team you want to lay a big number with. Generally speaking. Whew, I'm already having anxiety about that game next week. All right. But they'll start to play some better quarterbacks coming down the stretch. At least a few. I mean, they play the Ravens, they play the Bengals, the Chiefs. Coming up after that Titans game. But yeah, I agree in principle. Browns are undervalued. Chargers are definitely overvalued. I just am a bit worried, like, does Winston throw 1 or 2 key picks?
I mean, the fact that they don't get pressure though. I get it.
Yeah, but the Ravens got no pressure last week. Like he just is gonna miss a couple throws. Where does he miss them? Like, because Herbert doesn't really turn it over. That's my only concern. But in principle, I agree with you. I just prefer to tease it, which I'll have more on later.
All right, we're going with your final pick.
All right, for my third pick and the 5th overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going back to old reliable. The Green Bay Packers plus 3.5 at home against the Detroit Lions. Why am I saying old reliable? Pumpkin Goff. Pumpkin Goff, baby. Goff outdoors. First time all season. One of my favorite fades, especially against a competent team. I mean, look, the Lions are a covering machine. Dan Campbell, 70% against the spread since he took over in Detroit. Goff for his career, 60% against the spread, 73, 49, and 2. Indoors, though, 39 and 16. I mean, that's almost unbelievable. 71%. Outdoors, 34, 34, and 1 against the spread. He is much more human. There could be some elements here. You only need a little bit. Just a little win. Could have some rain. And this Lions offense, also, you get them outdoors, not as potent. LaFleur, by the way, at home, he's been almost as impressive as some of the Lions numbers. He's 28 and 16 against the spread, 63.6%, 6-1 against the number as an underdog. I just think this is the top of the market on the Lions. Their defense, I think, is still extremely vulnerable without Hutchinson. They have a couple other injuries as well in the front seven. But we just saw the Titans. The Titans, they couldn't move the ball on anyone all year. Move the ball up and down the field on the Lions in a completely misleading final score. I think the Lions had like 300 return yards, 3 short field touchdowns. And Detroit recently, it's like, they beat the Titans. They beat a decimated Dallas team that just had no one playing on defense. They got a beat-up Seattle team. The Lions are very good, legit Super Bowl contenders, but they benefited from the schedule of late. And they just seem to have the Vikings number. Go back to last year. They just have, Goff has Flores' number. You're going to see a lot more zone this week from Green Bay, and Goff has been much more pedestrian against zone than man this year. Now, the biggest question, the elephant in the room, is Jordan Love going to play? So I don't know. Could be that, LaFleur's playing games again like he did before, which is entirely possible. The MRI came back clean. They do have a bye week on deck. Green Bay historically pretty conservative with injuries to their stars, especially before a bye. But this is a huge game in the NFC, in the division. So I think there's at least a chance. But if Love played, I would have, and he was healthy, I would have the Packers favored here at home. If he doesn't play, the question is how much of a downgrade is it? And, before the year, when I bet the Packers against the Colts, I said, the market thinks this is like an 8. People think this is like 7, 8, 9-point downgrade. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it was closer to, 5 or 6. Now, after seeing Malik Willis, I should point out, it's a curious use of that that you had for the Jameis Winston stat. You said 64 plays or more. Well, if we change it to 61 plays or more, is number one in adjusted EPA per play? Malik Willis. Willis has been good. Now, it's only 61 snaps, but we've seen it 3 times. Now, the Colts defense isn't very good, and they had a great game plan in that game. The Titans defense is good. We saw it against the Titans. And even against the Jags last week, the Jags were leading in that game when Willis came in. And he put together scoring drives. He's been nothing but good every time we've seen him in all 3 games this season. Mobile quarterbacks can give Detroit issues with the way that they rush the passer. And I'm just still not entirely sold on this defense without Hutch. I think the Packers at home. So how much is the downgrade? Like, if I had the Packers favored in this, crossing 3 is so key. Maybe it's like closer to 3.5 to 4 points. So I wouldn't cross 3 here. So I'm taking anything over a field goal, mainly because of outdoor Goff. But there's also a chance that Love plays. Now, if Love gets ruled out, you could see this line creep out maybe to 4, but maybe 4.5. I'm sure the lines will be a big public play as well, but I'm comfortable taking anything over a field goal here because Willis has proven in this offense, and LaFleur has proven he'll have a really good game plan here. I think this Lions defense is vulnerable, and you get Goff outdoors. This Lions offense just not the same. So give me the home divisional dog. Go Pack, go.
Yeah, I like this. I like the spot more from the vantage point of fading the Lions based on they won 52-14, but got outgained by a ridiculous amount. They beat the Vikings, who everybody thought was elite. They beat the Cowboys by 40. Like and now they're going outdoors. But I mean, Malik Willis has played the AFC South. I still don't know where he's at, but also this Lion run defense generally good. So it looks like there's going to be weather in this game. So I don't know how much Jordan Love, that should be the equalizer for the home team, but the Lions run game, like if they want to dominate on the ground, I think they're the more likely team to. So yeah, I think the Packers are the right side. I do agree. I think the market is kind of overestimating the potential of Love being out, especially in this spot. Really hate, like I just hate betting against the Lions because they just find voodoo ways to cover the cover machines, but I can't really argue with it because I think it should be a weather game. Packers underdogs at home in a spot. I agree. This line probably would be like a Packers -1 or 2 if everybody was healthier. Maybe a pick them depending on how the market, because the market probably would still overreact to that blowout last week. But I mean, the Lions got 85 passing yards from Goff last week. He gets 3 touchdowns. Titans turn it over 4 times. Lions don't turn it over at all. Only thing is, if you get Love, that could be the same script. I mean, Love has been a turnover machine. Can Malik Willis stay clean in this spot? He has so far, but again, I don't. These AFC South teams, like I need to see him do it against someone that's not in the AFC.
I think the Titans defense is legit. Like they're a real defense, like not like the Colts. I'm glad you mentioned the 35+ point angle. It's an angle that I usually look at, especially when a team loses by 35 or more. But in this case, it also works the other way around. And if you look historically, bigger sample size, teams off of 35 or more point win 40% against the spread. As a road favorite, 10, 20, and 1 against the spread, 33%. As a road favorite of over a field goal, 6 and 16 against the spread, 27% against the spread. So, yeah, a little bit of a gamble here. So there's some uncertainty. There's also some other injury questions with the Packers. There's big rest day for them today. So we'll see in their secondary who ends up playing. But, the Lions don't have Hutch. They have, other injuries in their front 7 as well. So, and Josh Jacobs has been very good. Like he might be able to, he's second in the NFL in yards after contact behind only Derrick Henry. So he might be able to get something going here. And you're right, like the Lions offense is very good, but the Cowboys were so banged up, and it's not like they've been a good defense. The Seahawks, we just look at the Bills just did them, and they had so many injuries in that game in a bad spot. Like they've definitely benefited from their schedule and opposing injuries and certain matchups over the past month. And I think we're probably at the peak of the market on the Lions.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like I said, I think it's more just that, like what's been going on with the Lions. They're just due for a fade. It's always tough to fade them because they've just been so good against the spread. But at over 3, I can't blame you, especially. All right. Let me wrap it up with my third and the 6th overall of the week 9 Sunday 6-pack. I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks. There is a 2.5 out there, so plus 2.5 at home against the Los Angeles Rams. This is one where, I mean, I know the Rams got Kupp and Nakua back, but to me, these are still 2 pretty evenly matched teams. I know DK Metcalf may be out, but Seattle at home, second straight home game, coming off a 20+ point loss. I still think this is a pretty decent spot for Seattle, even with the Rams coming off the longer week. They do have Tariq Woolen back. Could get Trey Brown back this week at corner. That's going to be big against the Rams. I just can't get to this number with the Rams favored on the road. I mean, look at these two teams in
We're
defense.
saying we're saying the Rams are almost Buffalo.
Right, right, exactly.
Buffalo was laying
minus
3.
Yeah, Buffalo was laying 3. We're up to 2.5 at places with the Rams, and you look at Seattle. All right, on the year DVOA, the 16th overall, 15 on offense, 14 on defense, 12 on special teams. The Rams are 21st overall, 12th on offense, 28th on defense, 22nd on special teams. All right, you knock down the Seahawks a little on offense, and you give the Rams a little bump for guys being healthier and whatnot. But the Seahawks, they've also been unhealthy on defense. So you got, you kind of bump them up. So everything for the most part evens out. You still got Seattle at home going up against a bad defense. Even if Metcalf is out, I mean, this team is not they're not incapable of moving the ball up and down the field on a bottom 5 defense with Geno, Lockett, JSN, Kenneth Walker. And the right side of the line is a problem for Seattle. It's been like that for most of this.
They should get Fant back though this week.
I mean, yeah, I'm hoping. Right now, it's too early to know. But the left tackle's been good for Seattle. If they get any positive injury news, I mean, I still make this a slight favorite for Seattle, even with the injury news, and assuming Metcalf is not really going to be a factor here. So I just can't get to this number. Kind of going through the 0 to Rams being favored now. I just don't see it. I think Seattle get a lot more better effort, more desperate. And last week, a lot of Seattle fans were kind of complaining that it seemed more like a 50-50 crowd. They didn't have their usual home field. But, I mean, the Rams don't have fans that travel. So you probably just get a better home field advantage in this spot than you had last week. Again, second straight home game kind of offsets the longer rest for the Rams. And Sean McVay actually hasn't been great in these spots. He is just 12-25 against the spread coming off a multi-game winning streak. And I think the change in coaching staff in the offseason for Seattle, getting rid of the Carroll staff, it's benefits Seattle more because Sean McVay, he just had that.
Just cook them.
Yeah, they just had their number. So anything new here, like that they have to prepare for and haven't seen, is just, I think it just benefits Seattle more. So yeah, give me the Seahawks plus 2.5. Don't think this gets to 3 either, but no rush at this point. So if you don't see it come through in the app, that's why. But I'll take them plus 2.5 here.
Yeah, the Seattle defense has obviously been disappointed, but they got cooked by the Bills, they got cooked by the Lions. Those are 2 really good offenses, and they've also had so many injuries. They're healthier across the board on defense. They also added Ernest Jones. This will be his second game. They also added Robertson Harris to kind of reinforce that defensive line. And they were embarrassed last week. I mean, that was an embarrassing effort across the board. They were fighting each other on the sidelines, on defense, and the game just kind of got away from them, and the Bills did whatever they wanted. But there was also, they were at the 1-yard line. They snapped the ball over their head. They're at the 1-yard line again, and on 4th and goal, and they trip. Geno trips over his center. That game could have went a bit differently. And yeah, I mean, I have the Bills. The Bills, they're 3.5, 4 points better than the Rams on a neutral field, right? And this line was just Bills -3, and we knew Metcalf was out. This would have been one of my picks. I was just waiting on the Metcalf news because at 2.5, there's no risk in waiting. But I would definitely play it. If Metcalf was announced in, this line will probably move towards Seattle, and then I can play it, 1.5, 2, try to grab it. But if DK gets officially announced out, he didn't practice today, then maybe there's a chance it goes to 3. I don't think it would last long, but that's what I'm waiting for, because I do think DK is really important to that offense. It'll help, I think, to have a second game. If he doesn't play a second game without him, all right, we got to tweak this, we got to tweak that, because it wasn't working last week. And he obviously is such an important piece of just taking the top off of opposing defenses and opening up everything else for everybody underneath. And he obviously brings the explosive element downfield. So, but yeah, I think this number is crazy. So I agree with you here. I'm just waiting to see if DK gets ruled in, I'm going to play it. If he gets ruled out, I'm going to see if there's a 3, but wouldn't matter for this contest, but I agree with you there.
All right. So that is our Sunday 6-pack for week 9. To recap, Stuck has the Baltimore Ravens -5.5 in the first half, the Minnesota Vikings -3 in the first half, and the Green Bay Packers +3.5 for the game. I have
That's the best set of quarterbacks I've ever had. And it's the NFL, like some of these dogs, like are just unbettable that I would bet and cash with like for decades. And I've never remembered a season like this. There's 10 teams with 2 or fewer wins. Like it's an insane year. So yeah, trying to switch it up a bit and looking at a few different angles until some of these teams bottom out. Like where's the bottom on teams like Carolina? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's all. I mean, I just think it's kind of, it goes to the way teams are playing now. You know, they're trying not to give up explosives and making teams go up and down the field. And it's just, you know, these bad quarterbacks just aren't getting that turnover luck anymore. Because that's one of the things. If you're playing, you know, all these safeties back, you're not, you know, you're kind of just letting teams do what they want to do and make a mistake, but you're not creating the turnover. So it's really the bad quarterbacks that are just, they can't go up and down the field and they still turn the ball over. That's kind of how you're getting it. But yeah, I got Dallas +2.5, the Browns +2, and the Seahawks +2.5. All 3 of those, you know, kind of wait, see where the line ends up, because, you know, 2, you know, the key number is 3. I don't know if any of those get there, but it's worth waiting to see if they do. All right. That's going to do it for our NFL.
Wow, you know, recap the quarterbacks. This is the best group of
quarterbacks
we've ever had in our life.
All right. So you got Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, and potentially Jordan Love, maybe Malik Willis. I got Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, and Jameis Winston. So yeah, pretty good. I mean, there might have been one where we had like just as good, depending on if Willis plays. But yeah, it's up there.
Up there in the Mount Rushmore.
All right, that's our week 9 Sunday 6-pack.